And now we welcome aboard Philadelphia's true number one hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor down at the Wells Fargo Center. Charlie, before we get into anything else, they're still alive. What else can you say about this team?
I thought this was just an all-around great game played by the Flyers. This was a defensive clinic, and I'm not taking anything away from Sam Ersson. He played a perfectly solid game. He deserves a shutout. I feel really good for him that he's been able to, pull himself out of whatever rut he was in and find just a bit more energy for this stretch run. I feel really good for him. But defensively, this was as good of a game as I've seen the Flyers play all year. There was one breakdown I really remember, which was in the first period. I put it on Twitter. It was like the Red Sea parted in terms of the defense. Timo Meier gets a quality chance. Sam Ersson makes a save. But aside from that, I can't think of a major defensive breakdown aside from that one play. And it speaks to if there were any more concerns that John Tortorella has lost this team, they should be done. Like that's out the window, because what you've seen in these last two games, but especially tonight, you saw a team that was adhering to the Tortorella structure as well as any team can adhere to the Tortorella structure. And that's not something a team does if they're quitting on a coach. So I love the defensive game. I obviously really like the big play that Travis Konecny made, but I mean, this game could have been 0-0. This was a tight game. The Flyers just kind of out-defense the Devils. And I know the Devils aren't a defensive stalwart or anything. They used to be, obviously not anymore. But this was a battle between two teams that were playing tight checking games, that were making it so there wasn't a lot of space for anybody, and the Flyers came out on top. So I give them all the credit in the world for it. Great performance by.
And Charlie, I made the joke that you would have appreciated at the top. If anyone can appreciate a 20-save shutout, it has to be the Devils, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about Ersson because I think the most important thing about these last few games is him finishing strong, just so we have some grasp on what the goalie situation is going to be in the near future. And I ran through his segments of the season. First three games, 763 save percentage. Remember the disaster. Then he followed it up with 25 solid games, 915 save percentage over that time. And then 20 games of an 864. Now he has stopped 44 of the last 45 shots he's faced. I am happy for Sam Ersson, finding this and the team kind of finding it around him too. Is it a chicken and the egg situation? Okay, the team can play more. They have more confidence in the structure because they know the goalie's going to make the stops, or he's able to make the stops because they play the structure in front of him. How has this turnaround happened now where all of a sudden both the defense and the goalie look like they looked 2 months ago?
Well, it's worth noting, and John Tortorella made this point today after the game, I don't think the defense was a major problem through most of the 8-game losing streak. It became a problem the last couple games. The Columbus game and then obviously the Montreal game was a debacle. Before then, I think defensively, Flyers on the whole were playing pretty well. They weren't giving up a lot of shots. The goalies were letting them down. Whether it was Fedotov or Ersson, they were giving up, 23 shots and 5 of them were ended up in the back of the net. That was the goalies. Then I think the defensive structure fell apart as a result of a lack of confidence in the ability of the goalies to make a save and the inability of them to finish on their chances. I think it all gets fixed when they watch the first period in New York and they start thinking Ersson can actually make saves again. Then suddenly they don't have to lose structure. Suddenly they can let games come to them. And I think the thing I'm most impressed about is how quickly they were able to flip the switch back. Because sometimes it can take, Ersson's making saves again. That's great. But sometimes it can take a little bit of time before you recalibrate to, we need to go back to the structure that was working all year because our goalie can stop the puck again. They turned that switch real quick. I mean, this game, as I said, I think this was as good of a defensive game as they played all season long. And it just seemed like all they needed was the confidence that their goalie was going to stop the puck most of the time. And once they got that back, the defense is back. So I don't think it's a chicken and egg thing. I really do think it's the goalies. The
Okay.
goalies are what drove most of this. The defense fell apart at the very end when they completely lost faith in the goalies. And now that they have faith in Ersson again, the defense is back. I think that's the order of how this went down.
Hey, Charlie, JP over here. I mean, look, I want to talk about the power play real quick. I know we all know it's not good, right? 0 for 3 again here today. But I saw your tweet and I really agreed with it because, like, it just feels like there's no plan on the 5-on-3. Like, we're taking like wide angle shots. I mean, like, there's generally like no plan out there, Charlie.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting that the best chance probably they had on the power play tonight was a rush chance where Owen Tippett just goes through the defense as if it's 5-on-5. Like, that's one of the problems. And I've spoke to this all year, that I do believe that one of the reasons why the power play isn't very good is because this is a team that generates most of their offense off the rush at 5-on-5, and on the power play it's significantly harder to generate anything off the rush because teams just sit back in the neutral zone forecheck on the penalty kill and make you beat you. They make you beat them by setting up in the offensive zone. The Flyers don't have the kinds of elite playmakers that can really break down a defense on the cycle. They just don't have it. However, even though talent is a big part of this power play problem, this is not a well-coached power play. It's just not. And you can see it. I mean, everybody in the press box watching that 5-on-3, we were just looking at each other like, what are they even trying to do? It's all shots from distance. There's no motion. You have two more guys than the other team. You should be able to break them down. You should be able to confuse those three guys. I mean, when I watch great teams, what they do is they collapse. They collapse the formation, and they basically have it so, you know, they force the 3-man structure to just kind of like compress into that slot area, and then the guys on the perimeter shrink it, and they basically make it so everyone is almost in a high danger position to shoot. The Flyers go further out. They actually go further on the perimeter, or at least they did today, and that speaks to coaching. And I noted this on Twitter. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that I don't think Rocky Thompson's done a good job, but like, I'm okay if they bring Rocky Thompson back as the forwards coach. I think he's done a good job in that role. I think guys like Tyson Forrester, Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee, at least the first 2/3 of the year, I think they have all shown real progress under Rocky Thompson. But it's really, really hard for me to accept that, like, they're just going to run it back with Rocky Thompson running the power play, because, like, I say you can't do it, but, like, I guess they can do whatever they want. They certainly could run it back with him. It just, to me, it strikes me as a complete and total lack of accountability if they bring Rocky Thompson back as the guy running the power play for next season, because he deserves not all of the blame, definitely, but a not insignificant part of the blame, because not only does this power play lack high-end talent, it lacks any semblance of a plan. And that's on the coaches more than anybody else. I'm sorry.
And just to kind of piggyback off of what Charlie's saying there, last 2 seasons combined, the Flyers' power play is at 13.9%. And, you know, that's before today. 0 for 3, probably not going to change those numbers a ton. But no other team is below 16.5. The Flyers are sub 14, and no other team is under 16.5% on the power play the last 2 years. It's unfathomably bad, this power play. And it's hard to, you know, like, I didn't want to pin everything on the goalies earlier during the losing streak and everything, but it's like Charlie said, listen, when every shot goes in, what can you do? If the power play was just a little better, these last couple of games might not all be for naught. Like, if they just had 1 or 2 more games where the power play came through for them, they'd be in. But, of course, that's not the case. All right, Charlie, on Travis Konecny, I am, of course, back on the train. Now, who the hell knows, you know? But I thought it was very apt on Wayne Simmonds' night that, like, the emotional leader of this team, maybe a guy who's had more effect on the emotion of this team than anyone since Wayne Simmonds, scores the only goal, makes the big play, finds himself in the mix a lot. Just what can you say about TK tonight, the shorthanded goal, 6 on the year, and what he's meant over these last few games to get things back on track?
Yeah, well, it's obviously, the last two games he has been the hero. And Ersson's played well, don't get me wrong. It's Konecny and Ersson, but to me, Konecny is number one on the list of reasons why the Flyers are still technically in this playoff race. Travis Konecny has established himself very clearly, which we knew, but he's very clearly established himself as the best player on this team at the moment when they need the best player on the team to step up and carry them. He's doing it. I asked John Tortorella after the game a question about the idea of guys playing to the level of this moment. Because John Tortorella last week, when he was talking about it, he basically said he thinks it can be taught. That it's not that there are some guys that just have it and some guys don't. And if you don't have it, well, we got to get rid of you. He believes, he at least said that, he believes that guys can be taught how to excel in meaningful games, in playoff type situations, in the playoffs, period. He thinks it can be taught. And I asked him if he feels like there are guys on this team who are learning on the fly right now how to do it. And at first, Tortorella was like, well, I'm not going to name names, but yes, I absolutely believe there are guys on this team right now that are in the process of learning and making real strides in terms of learning how to make an impact in these kinds of games. Well, then someone else asked another question right after and asked specifically about Travis Konecny, not about my question, but just in general about Konecny. And midway through the question, midway through his answer, Tortorella looked back at me and he's like, TK's one of those guys that is right now learning how to be better in these kinds of situations. And Tortorella, I mean, this is a point that I made a few days ago. Tortorella more or less echoed it, that Konecny's problem, he thinks, is that Konecny's default reaction to when the games get more important is I need to ramp up my energy even more. He's already always at 10 out of 10 energy. Now he's playing at 15 out of 10 energy. And basically what Tortorella said is that we don't want him to stop being unpredictable. We don't want Konecny to stop being him. But he maybe needed to learn how to dial it back just a little. Like just a little so that it wasn't wasted energy. So it wasn't just him running around like a lunatic, but not having a clue why. Just a ton of energy in all different directions and not actually productive. I believe, and this is something where this I think will pay, especially if the Flyers resign him. Like this is going to pay dividends 3-4 years down the road when hopefully the Flyers are in playoff games, when they go into a series where they're favored, where we're expecting them to make a run. I think Travis Konecny is learning how to channel his energy in a productive way in these kinds of games and learning how to make an impact. Because, Bill, you've talked about it. The last time the Flyers were in the playoffs in that bubble, Travis Konecny didn't do shit. And it's a black mark on his career. And then during this run of meaningful games at the start, Konecny wasn't having the kind of impact that the best player on the team needs to have. I think over these last two games, it's almost like a light bulb has gone on in his head, and it's clicking, and he's starting to realize, like, this is what I have to do to play my game when the stakes get higher, when the pressure's on. And even if the Flyers don't make the playoffs, it's still probably unlikely that they make the playoffs, given the fact that it seems like everybody else is friggin' winning. If they just get out of this, that Travis Konecny now knows how to play meaningful games, that's a win in my book. It's huge, especially, again, if they re-sign him, which I suspect they will.
Charlie, real quick, I just want to look at this team and this bounce back that they've had. In general, like they're playing with a lot more effort. But for you, what's the main factor? What do you make of this bounce back that they've had?
Well, I think it really, at its core, and I mentioned this earlier, it's the goaltending first and foremost. Once you start believing that your goalie isn't going to give up a goal every fifth shot, then everything else kind of comes back together. The structure is better because you're not taking, unnecessary risks or needless risks or whatever, both in the defensive zone and the offensive zone. And then you go back to what made this team competitive all year long. The, winning battles in the corner, staying in structure. Like the Devils were having to go through layers of defense to create offense in this game. That's John Tortorella hockey. That's the defensive zone strategy that he has them playing. And it only works when everyone's on the same page. I think for those two games, the Columbus game, because the Buffalo game, they lost that game, but they played pretty well. That was a Fedotov just not being ready yet for the NHL kind of game. The Columbus game and then the Montreal game is when it all sort of fell apart. The structure started going to hell. I really think that's the key here, because I don't think they ever stopped trying. I just think that they lost faith, number one, in their goaltending. Number two, I think for a brief moment, they lost faith in themselves. They started thinking, maybe everybody's right about us. Maybe we do stink. And suddenly you're getting saves. Suddenly you're getting some bounces. And the Flyers look like the team that was exciting all year long. Now, again, I have my doubts if they're actually going to be able to make it. They obviously need to win one more game, and they need a lot of help. But at the very least, and we talked about this week on the show, Bill, that I needed to see them show that they weren't going to quit. That at that point, I didn't even care if they made the playoffs or not. I just needed there not to be 3 more games of 9-2 losses. And they're showing that to me. So I'm satisfied. It would be cool if they made the playoffs, but I'm satisfied after these 2 games. I don't want to say it straight up because there's one more game left. I am satisfied with this season. I am.
No, I mean, I did not want to go into the offseason doing the did they quit conversation. That would be very annoying. I think it's important that like Sam Ersson finishes. There's a bunch of reasons. But Charlie, I do have to ask, I think a lot of us were questioning, man, what the hell is Cam Atkinson still doing in this lineup? And then he comes out and maybe makes the play of the game, Charlie, taking an offensive zone penalty in order to spark the power kill. Now, we're not going to talk about Cam Atkinson today. Let me get your 3 stars of the game. Starting off with star number 3.
No. It actually was funny though. So at the end of the period, a reporter, I will not name him because I guess it was kind of shitting on Cam Atkinson, but he basically said that was the best play that Cam Atkinson has made in 3 months. That him taking that penalty to put the Flyers on the penalty kill and score the shorthanded goal. I mean, he's been rough. He was rough again tonight. He was last in the team in ice time. I feel bad for Cam Atkinson, but he's. At least this season, there's nothing left.
He did not play the final half of the 3rd period.
Yeah, and understandably. I mean, he wasn't effective. It was very clear. But going to the 3 stars, I actually did the 3 stars tonight at Wells Fargo Center. So I will just be repeating the 3 stars that people in the building already know. My 3rd star, and this was one where, like, he gets an assist, but I thought all game, Nick Seeler really set the tone. He's always a nutcase in terms of blocking shots, but I felt like in the first period he took it even to another level of just throwing his body around recklessly, getting in the way of anything. This was a defensive clinic, and Nick Seeler probably is their best pure defenseman in terms of being good at the defense. This was a Nick Seeler game. And then not only does he play really good defense all game, he also, with a really good play, basically is the reason why Travis Konecny gets that breakaway. I know Lawton gets the pass, but it's that Seeler play that makes that happen. And both Konecny and Lawton were really complimentary of Seeler after the game, understandably so. I thought it wasn't a flashy game for Nick Seeler, but he's not a flashy player. This was as Nick Seeler of a game as Nick Seeler has had all year. And for that reason, he's my 3rd star.
Let's hit it with star number 2.
Star number 2, Sam Ersson. Now, he didn't make a ton of huge saves. He honestly didn't make a ton of saves, period. He only got 20 shots on goal, but he stopped every single one of them. He avoided the weak goals. He played just the calm, controlled game that we've seen from him most of the year, really up until this past month when things started going off the rails. I am really impressed and I'm sure he's tired, both physically and mentally. I am really impressed that on the fly, he found a way to right the ship. I had lost faith, not in him as a goalie, but I had lost faith that he was going to be able to fix it this year. The fact that after this intense workload, all the games, all the pressure, that he found a way after that Montreal game to just like do a hard reset on the fly. It's really impressive. And I think it really speaks to his character and also just his mental fortitude. So Ersson, again, I didn't think it was a flashy game by him, but he made all the stops. Flyers win 1-0. You got to give a ton of credit to the goalie, Sam Ersson, my 2nd star.
Let's finish it off with Charlie O'Connor's 1st star of the game.
Yeah, star number 1 is Travis Konecny, and this is the 2nd straight game where he is star number 1. I'm not going to go so far as to say that he's putting the team on his back because I don't think that that's what's going on here. Like, this isn't like a Sidney Crosby just, making every play on every shift. But what he's doing is he's playing like the best player on the team. He's playing exactly the way he has to play in order to be effective in these games. And in both these games, he was the best player on the Flyers, not just in terms of scoring points and scoring goals. That's great. But that's an after effect. That's a result of the underlying process being better for Konecny. He just looks like he's in control, but he's not losing that intensity. He's still involved in scrums. He's still chirping. He was yelling at Brendan Smith just like he did in the Stadium Series game. Like, he was Travis Konecny, but he just found a way to dial it back just a touch so that he's having productive energy. He's actually, it's all coming from the right place. It's going in the right direction. And Travis Konecny, just like Ersson, I'm really impressed that he was able to do that reset on the fly. And John Tortorella seems really impressed that Travis Konecny appears to be learning how to correctly approach these games for him. And for that reason, Travis Konecny, only goal scorer of the game, he's my number one star as well.
All right, Charlie, thank you for joining us from the Wells Fargo Center. These 5 o'clock starts are pretty nice on Saturday. We're going to get out of here at a normal time. Not too shabby. I will talk to you again on Monday, my friend. Take care.
We all silly like the mayor.